The sound of a shotgun blast echoed through the dusty main street of Galesburg, Illinois, as Winifred Wilson stood trembling on the porch of what remained of her father's mercantile. The year was 1878, and everything she had known and loved was crumbling faster than the parched earth beneath her worn leather boots. Her father's body had been laid to rest just 3 days prior, and now the vultures were circling both the feathered kind and those wearing expensive suits, eager to pick clean the bones of what remained of the Wilson family legacy. "Miss Wilson, I'm afraid the debts are substantial," Mr. Rutherford, the bank manager, explained with a practiced expression of sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. "Your father borrowed heavily these past 2 years. With the drought and the railroad bypassing us for Peoria, well, there simply isn't enough to keep the store." Winifred, 22 and now completely alone in the world, stood straighter, her spine stiff as a new fence post. "My father built this business from nothing, Mr. Rutherford. There must be something that can be done. I can offer you $15 for the remaining inventory. It's charity, really, considering I don't need your charity." Winifred cut him off, her green eyes flashing with indignation. The word charity stung worse than the blisters on her palms from digging her father's grave alongside the undertaker. "The Wilson family has never taken handouts, and I won't be the first." Rutherford's lips thinned. "Pride won't feed you, Miss Wilson. You have until the end of the month to vacate the premises." As the bank manager's footsteps faded away, Winifred sank to her knees among the half-empty shelves, allowing herself exactly 3 minutes of tears before wiping her face with the back of her hand. She had no family left, no money, and precious few options in a town where opportunities for a single woman were limited to teaching, sewing, or marriage. None of those paths appealed to her independent spirit. The bell above the door jingled, and Winifred hurriedly stood, smoothing her black mourning dress and forcing a shopkeeper's smile that faltered when she saw who had entered. August O'Malley removed his worn leather hat, revealing sun-bleached brown hair and eyes the color of weathered saddle leather. At 30, he had the lean, hardened look of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. His ranch, the Crooked Arrow, lay 10 miles outside of town and was one of the few operations still turning a profit despite the hardships plaguing the region. "Miss Wilson," he said, his voice low and graveled from years of shouting over cattle and prairie winds. "I was mighty sorry to hear about your father. He was a good man." "Thank you, Mr. O'Malley," Winifred replied stiffly. Her father and August had never gotten along, something about a land dispute years ago that had simmered into a cold war of avoidance. August's presence in the store was unprecedented. "What can I help you with today?" August shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable in the confines of the mercantile. "I need some supplies. Coffee, flour, maybe some of those peppermint sticks if you've got any left." As Winifred gathered his items, August's gaze traveled around the increasingly bare shelves. "Heard Rutherford's calling in your father's loans." Winifred's hand stilled on the coffee tin. "News travels fast. Small town." August placed a few coins on the counter. "I also heard you turned down his offer." "It wasn't an offer. It was an insult," Winifred said, counting his change with trembling fingers. $15 for what's left of my father's life work." "What will you do?" The question hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. Winifred had been asking herself the same thing for 3 sleepless nights. "I'll manage, Mr. O'Malley. I always have." She handed him his purchases. "Will that be all?" August didn't take the parcel immediately. Instead, he stood examining her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. He was seeing too much the dark circles beneath her eyes, the proud but desperate set of her shoulders, the fading bruise on her forearm where she'd fallen while moving inventory alone. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Wilson," he said finally. "I'm not interested in charity, Mr. O'Malley." "Not charity, a partnership." His words dropped between them like stones in still water. "My foreman quit last month, took off for California gold country. I need someone with a head for figures and inventory, someone who can run the business side while I handle the cattle." Winifred stared at him. "You're offering me a job as your foreman. Me, a woman, my ranch manager," he corrected. "You've been running this store since your mother passed, haven't you? And before your father fell ill. You know goods, supplies, accounts. I know cattle. It could work. Why would you offer this to me?" "We're hardly friends, Mr. O'Malley. Our fathers were rivals." "That was their quarrel, not mine," August said. "Besides, I need help. You need a new start. It's business, pure and simple." Winifred's mind raced, working on a ranch, living among cowboys and cattle. It was unheard of for a woman of her standing. Then again, what standing did she have left? The gossips would talk, but they'd talk regardless about her failure, her poverty, her spinsterhood. What exactly would this partnership entail? She asked, hating the cautious hope that crept into her voice. "You'd live in the foreman's cabin. It's small but sound. You'd manage the books, supplies, coordinate with buyers, and oversee the household affairs, cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. In exchange, you'd receive room and board plus $20 a month. And you'd be my employer." August shook his head. "Partner. You'd have a 20% stake in the ranch's profits. If we do well, you do well. If we fail together." Winifred narrowed her eyes. "Why would you give away part of your ranch to a stranger?" "Because I'm drowning in the business side of things, and cattle are dying while I'm stuck doing ledgers." His honesty was disarming. "My father built the Crooked Arrow from nothing, just like your father built this store. I won't let it fail because I'm too proud to admit I need help." His words struck a chord. Winifred glanced around the store, the home and business her father had created through years of hard work. In less than a month, it would belong to the bank. What would her father want for her? "I'll need time to think about it," she said finally. August nodded, taking his purchases. "Fair enough. I'll be back in town on Friday." He paused at the door. "It's a real offer, Miss Wilson, not charity. I need your skills as much as you need a fresh start." After he left, Winifred stood motionless behind the counter, her mind whirling with possibilities. Partnership. Independence. A future away from pitying glances and whispers. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. By the time Friday arrived, Winifred had made her decision. She would accept August O'Malley's offer not out of desperation, but because it was the best option available to her. She told herself it was purely practical, a business arrangement between two people with complementary skills. She would not allow herself to think about his kind eyes or the quiet strength in his weathered hands. This was business, nothing more. When August returned to the store, Winifred was ready. "I accept your offer, Mr. O'Malley, with two conditions," she stated before he could speak. "First, I want everything in writing, my responsibilities, my stake in the ranch, everything. Second, I want it understood that this is a business arrangement only. I won't be subjected to any impropriety." August's expression remained unreadable. "I wouldn't have expected anything less, Miss Wilson. I'll have the papers drawn up by Judge Parker. As for your second condition, you have my word as a gentleman. Your reputation will remain intact under my roof. Then we have an agreement." Winifred extended her hand formally. August's calloused fingers engulfed hers, the handshake sealing their unusual partnership. Neither of them could have predicted how that simple handshake would alter the course of their lives forever. The preparations happened quickly. Winifred sold what little remained in the store, using the money to pay for her father's outstanding funeral expenses and to purchase a few necessities. The rest of her possessions fit into 2 trunks: her mother's china, her father's books, her own clothes and personal items. It was a pitiful sum of worldly goods for a woman of 22, but Winifred refused to dwell on it. The townspeople watched with a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity as August loaded her trunks into his wagon one cool October morning. Living alone with a man, not even married, Mrs. Pembroke whispered loudly enough for Winifred to hear as she passed. Her poor father would be turning in his grave. Winifred held her head high, ignoring the gossip. She climbed onto the wagon bench beside August, her back straight as a ramrod, hands folded primly in her lap. "Ready?" August asked, glancing sideways at her. "Yes." The single word contained all her determination and uncertainty. The journey to the Crooked Arrow took nearly 3 hours, winding through rolling prairie and scattered copses of trees just beginning to turn gold with autumn. Winifred had never been this far outside of Galesburg before, and despite her anxiety about the future, she couldn't help but marvel at the vastness of the landscape. "Is all this yours?" she asked as they crested a hill overlooking a valley where cattle grazed among tall grasses. "About 2,000 acres, August replied with a hint of pride. "My father started with just 100, built it up over 30 years. And your mother died when I was 15, influenza." His tone remained matter-of-fact, but Winifred caught the subtle tightening of his jaw. "Pa followed her 5 years ago. Heart just gave out one morning, been running the place alone since then." "I'm sorry," Winifred said softly. "It's not easy being the one left behind." August glanced at her, something shifting in his expression. "No, it's not." They lapsed into silence again. But it felt different now, a quiet understanding between 2 people who knew what it meant to shoulder legacies left by the dead. The ranch house came into view as they descended into a shallow valley, a 2-story structure of weathered wood with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Nearby stood a barn, bunkhouse, and various outbuildings. It was larger than Winifred had expected, speaking to the success of the O'Malley operation despite the regional hardships. "Home," August said simply, guiding the horses toward the main house. As they approached, men emerged from various areas of the ranch, cowboys in dusty clothes and worn hats, watching curiously as their boss arrived with a woman in tow. "That's Fletcher," August said, nodding toward a wiry older man with a salt and pepper beard. "He's been here since my father's day. Best horse trainer in 3 counties. The young fellow beside him is Thomas, newest hand. Good worker. There's about 8 men total, depending on the season." Winifred nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of her situation. These men would be looking to her for direction, for management. Would they respect a woman in such a position? August seemed to read her thoughts. "They're good men," he said quietly. "They'll follow your lead if you show them you know your business." He reined the horses to a stop in front of the main house, jumping down and coming around to help Winifred descend. His hands were strong and sure at her waist, lifting her as if she weighed nothing at all. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her body, and she stepped away quickly, smoothing her skirts. "Miss Wilson will be our new ranch manager," August announced to the gathered men, his tone brooking no argument. "She'll be handling the books, supplies, and household affairs. You'll give her the same respect you'd give me." Fletcher stepped forward, scrutinizing Winifred with sharp eyes. "No offense, miss, but we ain't never had a woman running things round here." "I understand your concern, Mr. Fletcher," Winifred replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I've never run a ranch before, but I managed my father's mercantile for years. I know business, numbers, and supply chains. I expect there will be things you'll need to teach me about ranch operations, and I'll be grateful for that education." Her honesty seemed to surprise the old cowboy, who glanced at August before offering a curt nod. "Reckon that's fair enough. Welcome to Crooked Arrow, Miss Wilson." The other men followed suit, tipping their hats or nodding in acknowledgement before drifting back to their duties. August picked up one of Winifred's trunks. "Let me show you to your cabin," he said, leading her past the main house toward a smaller structure about 50 yards away. The foreman's cabin was indeed small, just 2 rooms, with a main living area containing a wood stove, table and chair, and a separate bedroom. The furnishings were Spartan but functional, and everything was surprisingly clean. "Had the boys fix it up yesterday," August explained, setting down her trunk. "Roof sound, no drafts. Stove works well enough. Outhouse is out back. You can take your meals with us at the main house if you'd prefer, or cook for yourself here." "This will do nicely," Winifred said, running her finger along the table's edge. "Thank you. I'll bring your other trunk. Then, if you're not too tired, I thought I might show you the books, get you acquainted with our operation." Winifred squared her shoulders. "I'd prefer to start immediately. The sooner I understand the business, the sooner I can be useful." August's mouth curved into a small smile, the first she'd seen from him. It softened his weathered features, making him look younger, almost handsome. "I figured you'd say something like that. I'll be back in 10 minutes. True to his word, August returned with her second trunk and then escorted her to the main house. Inside was surprisingly comfortable, worn but quality furniture, a large stone fireplace, and walls lined with bookshelves. It spoke of generations of careful stewardship, of a home that had seen both prosperity and hardship. In the study, August showed her ledgers, cattle counts, supply inventories, and correspondence with buyers in Chicago and St. Louis. Winifred absorbed it all, asking pointed questions that occasionally seemed to surprise August with their insight. "Your father taught you well," he commented as she quickly identified discrepancies in the feed costs. "Necessity taught me," Winifred corrected. "Father's eyesight was failing these past 2 years. I've been doing the accounts since then." They worked until the shadows lengthened, and Winifred realized with a start that it was nearly evening. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since morning. "You must be hungry," August said, closing the ledger they'd been reviewing. "Mrs. Holloway comes in 3 times a week to cook for the ranch. Tonight's one of her nights. Nothing fancy, but it's hot and there's plenty." As if summoned by her name, a plump, gray-haired woman appeared in the doorway. "Supper's ready, Mr. O'Malley. Oh, you must be Miss Wilson." Her assessing gaze took in Winifred's simple dark dress and tidy appearance. "I've set an extra place at the table. I hope you like beef stew." "Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. Beef stew sounds wonderful," Winifred replied, finding she genuinely meant it. The long day had left her famished. Dinner was served in the large kitchen, with August at the head of the table and Winifred to his right. The ranch hands filtered in, each nodding respectfully to Winifred before taking their seats. The conversation was sparse at first, the men clearly unsure how to behave with a lady present, but gradually the atmosphere relaxed. Fletcher regaled them with a story about a stubborn Mustang he was training, and young Thomas hesitantly asked Winifred if the mercantile had carried those peppermint candies his mother was fond of. By the time Mrs. Holloway served apple cobbler for dessert, Winifred felt the first tentative threads of connection forming. She excused herself early, wanting to unpack and settle into her cabin. August walked her to the door. "You handled yourself well today," he said, the quiet approval in his voice stirring something in Winifred she tried to ignore. "Thank you. I'll be ready to continue in the morning. We start early around here." Breakfast at 5. I'll be there at 4:30, Winifred countered, a challenge in her eyes. August's mouth quirked. I have no doubt. Good night, Miss Wilson. Good night, Mr. O'Malley. As Winifred walked back to her cabin under a canopy of stars, she felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. For the first time since her father's death, she had a purpose, a direction. It wasn't the life she had expected, but perhaps it was the life she needed. That night, she slept better than she had in months, lulled by the distant lowing of cattle and the whisper of prairie wind through the cottonwoods. The days that followed established a routine. Winifred rose before dawn, dressed in the practical skirts and shirtwaists she'd brought from town, and made her way to the main house. She prepared coffee and simple breakfasts alongside Mrs. Holloway on the days the older woman was present, and alone on the days she wasn't. The ranch hands quickly grew accustomed to her presence, treating her with a gruff respect that gradually warmed into genuine regard as they saw her competence and work ethic. August was often gone before first light, riding out to check the herds or mending fences with his men. But each evening, he returned to review the day's business with Winifred, their heads bent together over ledgers and supply lists. It was during these evening sessions that Winifred began to truly know the man behind the stoic cowboy exterior. August was intelligent, with a quick mind for business despite his protestations about disliking the paperwork. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged unexpectedly, and a deep knowledge of the land and animals that spoke of a lifetime of careful observation. Most surprising to Winifred was his bookshelf filled not just with agricultural texts and ledgers, but with volumes of poetry, history, and philosophy. She discovered him one evening reading Emerson by lamplight. "You seem surprised," he said when he caught her staring. "I suppose I didn't picture cowboys reading transcendentalist philosophy," she admitted. "My mother was a schoolteacher before she married my father," August explained, marking his place in the book. "She believed education shouldn't stop just because we lived far from town. She taught me to love learning for its own sake. She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. His eyes softened with memory. "You remind me of her sometimes, that same stubborn determination." Winifred wasn't sure if that was a compliment, but the warmth in his voice suggested it was. She changed the subject, uncomfortable with the intimacy of the moment. As October gave way to November, Winifred found herself increasingly invested in the ranch's success. She reorganized the supply system, negotiated better prices with merchants in Galesburg, and implemented a more detailed accounting system that identified several areas where they could reduce costs. "We're saving nearly 15% on feed costs with your new supplier arrangements," August noted one evening, reviewing her figures with obvious approval. "And the new rotation schedule for the hands means we're getting more work done with the same number of men," Winifred added, unable to keep a note of pride from her voice. "You've proven yourself a valuable partner, Miss Wilson." "Winifred," she said suddenly. "After all these weeks of working together, I think you might call me Winifred." August looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "August, then," he replied after a moment, "at least when it's just the two of us." "August," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt strangely intimate, this small breach of formality. Their eyes held for a long moment before Winifred looked away, focusing intently on the ledger before her. But something had shifted between them, a subtle warming, like the first hint of spring after a long winter. That same week brought the first significant challenge of their partnership. A early winter storm blew in from the north, bringing freezing temperatures and driving sleet that threatened the cattle. Winifred awoke to the sound of shouting and pounding on her door. She opened it to find Thomas, his face red with cold and worry. "Miss Wilson, Mr. O'Malley needs help. The north herd's trapped by the creek. It's rising fast with the melt from higher ground." Winifred dressed quickly in her warmest clothes, pulling on the men's boots she'd taken to wearing around the ranch. By the time she reached the main house, August and several hands were preparing to ride out. "You should stay here," August said when he saw her. "It's dangerous out there." "I'm coming," Winifred stated firmly. "If we lose that herd, we lose our spring profits. I need to assess the situation firsthand." August looked as if he wanted to argue, but a crash of thunder decided the matter. "Stay close to Fletcher," he ordered, helping her mount one of the more docile horses. The ride to the north pasture was grueling. Freezing rain pelted them mercilessly, and the wind cut through Winifred's layers like a knife. By the time they reached the creek, her hands were numb around the reins, and her face felt frozen in place. The situation was dire. The normally placid creek had swollen to twice its size, trapping about 50 head of cattle on a rapidly shrinking island of land. The animals were panicking, some threatening to bolt into the rushing water. "We need to create a path for them," August shouted over the storm. "Drive them toward that shallow point. Fletcher, Thomas, circle around behind. Winifred," he stopped, clearly reconsidering asking her to help. "I can do it," she insisted, surprising herself with how much she wanted to prove herself in this crisis. August studied her for a beat, then nodded. "Stay with me. We'll guide them from this side." The next hours blurred into a chaotic struggle against nature. Winifred worked alongside the men, her voice joining theirs as they urged the frightened cattle toward safety. Twice, she nearly fell from her horse as the animal struggled through mud, and once August's hand shot out to steady her, a brief, strong grip that anchored her back to safety. The rain eventually stopped, but the temperature continued to drop. By the time they'd moved the last of the herd to higher ground, Winifred could no longer feel her feet or fingers. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably, and her sodden clothes hung heavy as lead. "We need to get you warm," August said, his own face pale with cold beneath his beard stubble. He pulled off his coat, still somewhat dry beneath his slicker, and wrapped it around her shoulders despite her protests. "The men," she managed through chattering teeth. "Fletcher's taking them back. We'll use the line shack. It's closer." He helped her onto his horse, climbing up behind her and wrapping one arm securely around her waist. "Hold on." The line shack was little more than a one-room shelter stocked with basic supplies for emergencies exactly like this one. August practically carried Winifred inside, setting her on a rough wooden chair while he quickly built a fire in the small stove. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," he said, his voice professional but concerned. "I'll turn my back. There are blankets in that trunk." Too cold to feel embarrassed, Winifred struggled out of her frozen garments while August kept his word, facing the wall as he removed his own wet outer layers. She wrapped herself in 2 scratchy wool blankets, huddling near the stove as warmth gradually began to return to her extremities. "You can turn around now," she said, her voice still unsteady. August had stripped to his long underwear and shirt, both thankfully drier than his outer clothing. He hung their wet things near the stove, then rummaged through the shack's supplies, producing a tin of coffee and some jerky. "Not exactly a feast," he apologized, setting water to boil. "It's perfect," Winifred assured him, accepting the jerky gratefully. Now that warmth was returning, so was her hunger. They sat in companionable silence, drinking the strong black coffee and sharing the meager provisions. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the tiny shack, a cocoon of warmth began to grow. "You surprised me today," August said finally. "Most women would have stayed behind." "I'm not most women," Winifred drew the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Besides, it's my herd too now. Yes, it is. August's eyes reflected the glow from the stove. You've become a real rancher, Winifred Wilson. The pride in his voice warmed her more than the fire. I had a good teacher. You're a natural. The men respect you, so do I. He hesitated, then added more quietly, more than respect, if I'm honest. Winifred's heart stuttered in her chest. August, you don't need to say anything, he interrupted. I know our arrangement was business only. I don't expect anything. But after today, watching you out there fighting alongside us all, I just thought you should know. The confession hung in the air between them, as tangible as the steam rising from their coffee cups. Winifred stared into her mug, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions his words had stirred. When she'd agreed to this partnership, she'd been focused solely on survival, on maintaining her independence. She hadn't allowed herself to consider August as anything other than a business associate. But now, confronted with his quiet admission, she realized her feelings had been shifting for weeks, perhaps since that first day in the mercantile when he'd offered her not charity but partnership. I don't know what to say, she admitted finally. This is all so unexpected. 3 months ago, I was a shopkeeper's daughter with a clear path ahead. Now everything is different. Different bad? August asked, his expression guarded. Different. Surprising. Winifred met his gaze. I need time, August. This partnership means everything to me. I can't risk it on impulse. August nodded slowly. I understand. I shouldn't have spoken. No, Winifred said quickly. I'm glad you did. Honesty between partners is important. I need to be sure of myself, of what I want. Take all the time you need, August replied, his voice gentle. I'm not going anywhere. The storm passed overnight, leaving a glittering world of ice in its wake. They rode back to the ranch the next morning, their wet clothes stiff with frost but wearable. The hands greeted their return with relief, and life on the ranch gradually returned to its normal rhythm. But something had changed between Winifred and August. There was a new awareness in their interactions, a careful distance that hadn't been there before. Winifred found herself noticing things she'd previously overlooked: the way August's eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle way he handled young animals, the respect with which he treated everyone around him. As winter deepened, the ranch settled into its cold weather routine. The cattle required different care, and much of the work shifted to mending equipment and planning for spring. Winifred used the time to completely reorganize the ranch's financial records, creating a clear picture of their position. We're doing better than I thought, she told August one evening as they sat in the study. Outside, snow fell steadily, piling against the windows. If the spring calving goes well, we should turn a healthy profit this year. Thanks to you, August said. Your management has made all the difference. Our management, Winifred corrected. You've taught me everything I know about ranching. You're a quick study. August hesitated, then added, Christmas is next week. I thought perhaps we might host a dinner for the hands, Mrs. Holloway mentioned she'd be willing to cook something special. That's a wonderful idea, Winifred agreed, surprised by his thoughtfulness. Perhaps we could give the men each a small bonus as well. They've worked incredibly hard this year. Already planned on it. August smiled, and Winifred felt that now familiar warmth spread through her chest. Christmas at the Crooked Arrow turned out to be one of the most joyful celebrations Winifred could remember. The main house was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons, the table laden with a feast that Mrs. Holloway had clearly poured her heart into preparing. The ranch hands arrived in their Sunday best, hair slicked down and faces scrubbed pink. August presented each man with a small leather pouch containing their bonus, along with a new pair of gloves. The genuine gratitude in their responses told Winifred more about her partner's character than words ever could. After dinner, Fletcher produced a fiddle and began playing, the lively tune soon having boots tapping and hands clapping. To Winifred's surprise, August extended his hand to her. "May I have this dance, Miss Wilson?" he asked formally, though his eyes twinkled. "I'd be delighted, Mr. O'Malley," she replied, placing her hand in his. They danced in the cleared space of the main room, August leading with unexpected grace for a man who spent most of his life on horseback. Winifred was acutely aware of his hand at her waist, the clean scent of soap and pine that clung to him, the warmth of his body so close to hers. When the music slowed to a gentle waltz, August drew her slightly closer. "I have something for you," he said quietly, so only she could hear. After the men leave, the celebration continued for another hour before the hands bid their good nights, heading back to the bunkhouse with full stomachs and high spirits. Mrs. Holloway left soon after, bundled into her wagon for the ride back to town where her sister was expecting her. "Come with me," August said when they were alone. Leading Winifred back into the study, from his desk drawer he withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Merry Christmas, Winifred." She took it, suddenly self-conscious. "I don't have anything for you." "You've given me more than enough this year," he assured her. "Open it." Inside the paper was a small leather-bound book. Winifred opened it to find blank pages, the paper high quality and smooth beneath her fingers. "It's a journal," August explained. "I thought you might like to record your experiences, your first year as a rancher." "It's perfect," Winifred said, genuinely touched by the thoughtful gift. "Thank you, August." "There's something else." August looked uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been thinking about our partnership." "About making it more official," Winifred echoed, not understanding. August withdrew a document from his desk. "I've had Judge Parker draw up new partnership papers. These would make you a full half partner in the Crooked Arrow. Equal ownership, equal say in all decisions." Winifred stared at him in disbelief. "Half, August, that's too generous. I've only been here a few months. And in those few months you've transformed this ranch, improved our profits, our efficiency, our future prospects." He placed the document in her hands. "This isn't generosity, Winifred, it's good business." She scanned the legal language, her heart pounding. It was all there, exactly as he'd said, equal partnership in all aspects of the ranch. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," August replied simply. "Be my partner in every sense." Winifred's head snapped up at his words. "Every sense." August took a deep breath. "I promised to give you time, and I meant it. But I can't pretend my feelings haven't grown stronger these past weeks. I respect you, Winifred. I admire your intelligence, your courage, your determination. And yes, I care for you as more than a business partner." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "I'm not proposing marriage, not yet. That would be presumptuous. I'm proposing we see where this might lead, with the security of knowing your position here is legally protected regardless of what happens between us." Winifred looked down at the partnership agreement, then back at August's face. The man before her was nothing like she'd expected when she'd first agreed to come to the Crooked Arrow. He wasn't just a rough cowboy, but a thoughtful, intelligent, honorable man who saw her as an equal, who valued her contributions, who offered her not charity but true partnership. And somewhere along the way, between ledgers and cattle drives, through storms and quiet evenings by the fire, her feelings for him had transformed as well. "Yes," she said softly, "to both, the partnership and seeing where this leads." August's smile was like sunrise breaking across the prairie. He stepped forward, one hand gently cupping her cheek. "May I?" Winifred nodded, her heart racing as August lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But when Winifred responded, stepping closer and sliding her hands to his shoulders, August deepened the kiss, his arms encircling her waist. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, August rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since you stood up to Rutherford in your father's store," he confessed. Winifred laughed softly. "That's why you offered me the job, for a kiss." "For the possibility of many kisses," August corrected, his eyes crinkling. "And because I needed a good ranch manager. Lucky for me, I found both in the same remarkable woman." As they stood in the warm study, snow falling softly outside the windows, Winifred felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This wasn't the life she had planned, but perhaps it was the life she was meant to have all along, one built not on charity but on true partnership, mutual respect, and growing love. The winter of 1878–79 proved to be one of the harshest in recent memory. Snow piled in drifts taller than a man, and temperatures plummeted so low that the creek froze solid enough to drive wagons across. But inside the main house of the Crooked Arrow Ranch, warmth bloomed like spring flowers. Winifred and August settled into their new relationship with the same determination and care they brought to their business partnership. During the day, they worked side by side managing the ranch, making decisions together about cattle, supplies, and hands. In the evenings, they explored their growing feelings, sometimes talking late into the night about their pasts, their hopes, their dreams for the future. "I never thought I'd find someone who understands both sides of me," August confessed one night as they sat before the fire. "The rancher and the reader. My father always said books were a waste of time for a working man." "My father said much the same about ranching," Winifred replied, her head resting comfortably against his shoulder. "He couldn't understand why anyone would choose such a difficult life when they could have the security of a shop in town." "And yet here we are," August mused, "proving them both wrong." Winifred laughed. "I think they'd be surprised to see us now." As their relationship deepened, Winifred maintained her residence in the foreman's cabin, conscious of appearances and her own need for independence. August respected her boundaries, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. The ranch hands observed the changing relationship between their boss and manager with knowing smiles but respectful silence. Fletcher, ever the spokesman for the men, pulled Winifred aside one morning after breakfast. "The boys and I just wanted to say we're mighty pleased about you and the boss," the older man said gruffly. "Never seen him happier. Ranch is running better than ever, too." Winifred felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you, Fletcher. That means a lot." "Man needs a good woman," Fletcher continued. "Especially a hard-headed one like the boss. Keeps him honest." He tipped his hat and ambled away, leaving Winifred both embarrassed and touched by the men's approval. By February, the partnership papers were officially filed with the county, and Winifred Wilson became legal co-owner of the Crooked Arrow Ranch. The document was framed and hung prominently in the study, a testament to how far they'd both come since that desperate day in the mercantile. With the arrival of March came the first signs of spring and the beginning of calving season. Winifred quickly learned this was the most crucial time of the ranching year, with the entire operation working around the clock to ensure the safe delivery of the new calves that would form the basis of next year's profits. She threw herself into the work, learning to assist with difficult births and care for weak newborns. It was exhausting, often heartbreaking work, but there was something profoundly satisfying about helping bring new life into the world. "You're a natural," August said one morning, finding her in the barn with a newborn calf she'd stayed up all night to tend. "That little fellow wouldn't have made it without you." Winifred looked up from the straw where she sat beside the now nursing calf, her dress stained and hair disheveled from the night's work. "He's a fighter, just needed a little help." August knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Marry me, Winifred." The words were so unexpected that for a moment Winifred thought she'd misheard. "What? Marry me?" August repeated, his eyes intent on hers. "I've known since Christmas, but I wanted to wait until you knew it too. I love you, Winifred Wilson. I want to build a life with you, not just a business, but a family, a future." Winifred stared at him, taking in his earnest expression, the hope and vulnerability in his eyes. This man who had offered her a partnership when she needed it most was now offering her his heart, his name, his life. "August," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "are you certain? I'm not exactly a traditional ranch wife. I have opinions, strong ones." "Thank God for that," he replied with a chuckle. "I don't want a traditional wife. I want you stubborn, brilliant, independent you. The woman who argues with cattle buyers until they raise their offers. The woman who stays up all night with sick calves. The woman who keeps me honest and makes me better every day." He took her hands in his, not minding the dirt and straw. "I'm not asking you to give up anything. You'll still be my partner in every way. I just want the right to stand beside you for the rest of our lives." Tears welled in Winifred's eyes, tears of joy, of wonder, of gratitude for how dramatically her life had changed in just a few short months. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you, August O'Malley." August's face lit with such joy that it took Winifred's breath away. He gathered her into his arms, heedless of their surroundings, and kissed her with a passion that left no doubt of his feelings. A discreet cough from the barn doorway eventually separated them. Fletcher stood there, trying and failing to hide his grin. "Beggin' your pardon, boss, but we got 3 more heifers ready to drop in the south pasture." "Be right there," August replied, not taking his eyes from Winifred's face. "Duty calls," he said softly. "But we'll continue this conversation later." "I'll hold you to that, partner," Winifred replied with a smile. They were married in April, when the prairie bloomed with wildflowers and the new calves gamboled on strengthening legs. The ceremony took place on the ranch, beneath the spreading branches of an old cottonwood tree. Judge Parker came from town to perform the service, and Mrs. Holloway outdid herself preparing a feast for the celebration. Winifred wore a simple dress of pale blue, not white. She insisted, as white was impractical on a working ranch. But she did concede to flowers in her hair, a crown of prairie blossoms that August's hands had helped gather that morning. "Never thought I'd see the day," Fletcher remarked to Thomas as they watched the couple exchange vows. "Boss finding a woman who could match him stride for stride." "Miss Wilson, Mrs. O'Malley, now she's something special," Thomas agreed. "Saved my job when I messed up those feed orders. Said everyone deserves a second chance." "That they do, boy," Fletcher nodded. "That they do." After the ceremony and celebration, when the guests had departed and the hands had discreetly made themselves scarce, August carried Winifred across the threshold of the main house, their home now together. "Welcome home, Mrs. O'Malley," he murmured, setting her gently on her feet. "That still sounds strange," Winifred admitted, reaching up to touch his face. "But I think I could get used to it." "You have a lifetime to practice," August replied, drawing her into his arms. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their room, August traced gentle patterns on Winifred's bare shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Taking my offer that day in the mercantile?" Winifred propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at her husband's face in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Not for a single moment," she answered truthfully. "It was the best decision I ever made, even though it meant leaving everything you knew. Taking on a life you never planned for, especially because of that. Winifred leaned down to kiss him softly. Sometimes the life we plan isn't the life we're meant to have. You offered me partnership when I needed it most, not charity, but a chance to build something alongside you. How could I ever regret that? August pulled her closer, his arms strong and secure around her. I love you, Winifred O'Malley, more than I have words to say. I love you too, she whispered against his chest. My partner, my husband, my home. As spring gave way to summer, the crooked arrow flourished under its joint leadership. Winifred and August settled into married life with the same determination and complementary skills that had made their business partnership so successful. Word spread about the unusual arrangement at the O'Malley Ranch, a woman with equal say in operations, a true partnership between husband and wife. Some neighboring ranchers scoffed at the notion, but others, seeing the crooked arrow's growing success, began to wonder if there might be wisdom in the approach. In July, Winifred received an unexpected visitor. Mr. Rutherford, the bank manager from Galesburg, arrived unannounced one afternoon while August was out checking the herds. Mrs. O'Malley, he greeted her stiffly, hat in hand. You're looking well. Thank you, Mr. Rutherford, Winifred replied coolly. What brings you to the Crooked Arrow? The bank manager cleared his throat. Business, I'm afraid. Several ranches in the area are struggling after the harsh winter. The bank is considering calling in some loans. The Crooked Arrow's loans are current, Winifred stated, leading him to the study where she kept the financial records. In fact, we made an extra payment last month. Yes, I'm aware, Rutherford admitted. That's actually why I'm here. The bank is interested in expanding its agricultural lending, but we need better understanding of successful operations. Your husband's ranch, our ranch, Winifred corrected firmly. Yes, of course. Your ranch has shown remarkable resilience and growth during a difficult period. I was hoping you might be willing to advise us on what makes the difference. Winifred regarded the man thoughtfully, remembering how he had offered her charity in her darkest hour. How different her life would have been had she accepted those $15 and faded into obscurity. I'd be happy to offer some insights, Mr. Rutherford, she said finally. In fact, I believe there's considerable opportunity for banks to better serve the agricultural community, with more flexible lending terms and seasonal payment structures. For the next hour, Winifred outlined the financial strategies she'd implemented at the Crooked Arrow, explaining how proper cash flow management and diversified income streams had helped them weather the difficult winter. Rutherford took copious notes, his initial condescension gradually giving way to genuine respect. When August returned, he found his wife and the banker deep in discussion about creating a specialized loan product for ranchers. Mr. Rutherford, August greeted the man with a firm handshake. This is an unexpected pleasure. Your wife has been most informative, Rutherford replied. She suggested several innovations that could benefit both the bank and the ranching community. In fact, I'd like to invite both of you to speak at our Regional Banking Association meeting next month. Later, after Rutherford had departed, August pulled Winifred into his arms. You never cease to amaze me, from refusing his charity to advising his bank in less than a year. Life takes unexpected turns, Winifred replied with a smile. Speaking of which, I have some news. August raised an eyebrow. More surprising than turning Rutherford into an ally. Much more surprising. Winifred took a deep breath. We're going to have a baby. Next spring, around calving season. August's expression transformed from surprise to wonder to pure joy in the span of a heartbeat. A baby. You're certain? Winifred nodded, tears of happiness pricking her eyes. Dr. Matthews confirmed it yesterday when he was out checking Fletcher's shoulder. We're going to be parents, August. August swept her into his arms, spinning her in a circle before setting her gently back on her feet. "A family," he whispered, his hand coming to rest on her still flat abdomen. "Our family." "Are you happy?" Winifred asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we haven't discussed children yet." "The ranch keeps us so busy." "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," August assured her, his voice thick with emotion. "This is everything I could have wished for, Winifred. You, our ranch, and now a child, our child." That autumn, as they prepared for another winter, Winifred and August began making plans for their growing family. The study adjacent to their bedroom was transformed into a nursery, with Fletcher and the hands surprising them by crafting a beautiful oak cradle as a gift. "My grandfather taught me woodworking," Fletcher explained gruffly when Winifred embraced him with tears in her eyes. "Figured the little one should have something special to sleep in." As Winifred's body changed with the advancing pregnancy, so too did her role on the ranch. She remained active in management decisions, but delegated more of the physical work, focusing instead on training young Thomas to take over some of her duties. "You have a good head for figures," she told the young cowboy after he correctly balanced the monthly accounts. "Have you ever considered that you might do more than ranch work?" Thomas shrugged. "Never had much schooling, madam. My pa needed me on his farm from the time I was knee-high." "Education doesn't have to happen in a schoolhouse," Winifred replied, thinking of the books that lined August's study. "If you're interested in learning more, my husband and I would be happy to help." The winter of 1879-80 was milder than the previous year, for which Winifred was grateful as her pregnancy advanced. By February, she was round with child, her movements slowed but her mind as sharp as ever. August hovered protectively, insisting she rest more and worry less. "The ranch won't fall apart if you take an afternoon nap," he insisted one day, finding her poring over seed catalogs for the kitchen garden. "I know," Winifred admitted, "but I feel so useless just sitting around." "Growing our child is the most important work you could be doing," August said, kneeling beside her chair and placing his hand on her swollen belly. As if in response, the baby kicked against his palm, bringing a look of wonder to his face. "See, even our little one agrees, Doctor." Matthews made regular visits as Winifred's time drew near, assuring them that mother and child were doing well. Mrs. Holloway moved temporarily into one of the spare bedrooms, her experience with childbirth a comfort to the nervous parents-to-be. The baby arrived on a clear March morning, just as the first calves of the season were being born. Winifred's labor was long but uncomplicated, with August refusing to leave her side despite the tradition that men should wait elsewhere. "I'm not going anywhere," he insisted when Mrs. Holloway suggested he might be more comfortable in his study. "My place is with my wife." After 10 hours, their son was born, a robust boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's strong features. They named him William, after Winifred's father, with Fletcher as his middle name in honor of the old cowboy, who had become family to them. "He's perfect," August whispered, cradling his son with hands that normally handled reins and ropes, but now displayed a gentleness Winifred had always known was there. "He's an O'Malley," Winifred replied with tired satisfaction. "Strong and stubborn, I have no doubt." The men celebrated the birth with what Fletcher termed a proper ranch christening, each taking turns holding the infant with considerable nervousness and offering wishes for his future. Thomas, whose reading had improved dramatically under Winifred's tutelage, presented the baby with a children's book he'd purchased with his savings. As spring turned to summer, Winifred adapted to the challenges of motherhood with the same determination she'd brought to ranching. William proved to be a content baby, happy to sleep in a basket beside her while she worked on the ranch accounts, or to be carried in a sling against her chest as she supervised the kitchen garden. August took to fatherhood with natural ease, often carrying William on his morning rounds of the ranch, pointing out cattle and horses to the wide-eyed infant. "He'll be riding before he walks," August predicted proudly. "A true rancher's son." "He'll be whatever he chooses to be," Winifred countered. "Just as we both were free to choose our paths." August smiled, recognizing his wife's fierce independence in her words. "Fair enough, partner. Whatever he chooses, we'll support him." By William's first birthday, the Crooked Arrow had expanded its operations, adding a small herd of sheep on Winifred's suggestion that diversification would provide stability during cattle market fluctuations. The decision proved prescient when beef prices dropped temporarily that summer, but the ranch's wool sales kept them comfortably profitable. The banking association talk had led to unexpected opportunities as well. Ranchers from neighboring counties occasionally sought Winifred's advice on financial matters, and she began to develop a reputation as a shrewd business consultant. August supported her endeavors wholeheartedly, proud of his wife's growing influence. "Mrs. Harrison asked if you might look over their books next week," he mentioned one evening as they sat on the porch, watching William toddle unsteadily after a butterfly. "Her husband's been ill, and she's trying to keep their place running." "Of course I will," Winifred replied without hesitation. "Perhaps we should invite them to dinner as well. Thomas could watch William for a few hours." August reached over to take her hand. "You've created something remarkable here, you know, not just with the ranch, but with how you've helped change people's thinking. 5 years ago, a woman like Mrs. Harrison wouldn't have had anyone to turn to for help running her husband's affairs." "We've created something remarkable," Winifred corrected him. "This partnership works because of both of us, August." He brought her hand to his lips. "Always my partner, in everything." As William grew from toddler to young boy, the Crooked Arrow continued to thrive. In 1883, Winifred gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, a spirited child with her mother's determination and her father's easy laugh. 2 years later, another son joined the family, James, the quietest of the three but with a thoughtful nature that reminded Winifred of August's contemplative side. Through the years, the ranch expanded, adding acreage and improving its breeding stock. The original partnership agreement hung in the study, now a little faded but still a testament to the unusual arrangement that had brought Winifred and August together. Fletcher remained with them, becoming Grandpa Fletch to the children and training a new generation of cowboys in the Crooked Arrow way. Thomas eventually became the ranch foreman, his natural intelligence nurtured by years of learning from both August and Winifred. Mrs. Holloway continued her thrice weekly cooking duties well into her 70s, claiming the O'Malley children kept her young. In 1888, 10 years after Winifred had first stepped onto the ranch, August surprised her with a special anniversary gift, a new sign for the entrance to their property. The weathered Crooked Arrow Ranch signboard was replaced with one reading O'Malley and Wilson Ranch, with their brand beneath. "Because that's what it's always been," August explained as Winifred traced the carved letters with tears in her eyes. "A true partnership." That evening, as they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard, Winifred reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate young woman too proud to accept charity to the confident ranch owner, wife, and mother she had become. "Any regrets?" August asked, seeming to read her thoughts as he often did. Winifred looked at her family, William teaching Elizabeth to lasso a fence post, while baby James observed from his blanket, the ranch hands finishing their day's work with cheerful calls to one another, the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance. "Not one," she replied, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Not a single one." August pressed a kiss to her temple. "Neither do I, partner, neither do I." The legacy of their unusual partnership extended far beyond the boundaries of the O'Malley and Wilson ranch. In a time when women's roles were narrowly defined, Winifred and August had created a different model, one of equal partnership, mutual respect, and shared success. Their children grew up seeing both parents making decisions, solving problems, and building something meaningful together. William eventually took over management of the ranch, implementing new breeding techniques while maintaining the principled approach to business his parents had established. Elizabeth, with her mother's head for figures, attended college in Chicago, one of the few women in her business program, before returning to help expand the family enterprises. James, the quiet observer, became a veterinarian, his gentle ways with animals a boon to ranchers throughout the county. As for Winifred and August, they remained active in ranch operations well into their later years, their partnership evolving but never diminishing. They became respected elders in the ranching community, frequently consulted for their wisdom and experience. The story of how they met, of a proud woman who refused charity and the cowboy who offered partnership instead, became something of a legend in Galesburg and beyond. On cool evenings, they still sat together on the porch of the home they had built, watching the sun set over the land they had nurtured together. Their hands, weathered now with age but still strong, would often find each other, fingers intertwining in a gesture as natural as breathing. "Best business decision I ever made," August would sometimes say, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled at his wife. And Winifred, thinking of that desperate day long ago when she'd stood in her father's failing store, would squeeze his hand and reply, "Best partnership I could have imagined." Because in the end, that was what had saved them both, not charity but partnership. Equal, respectful, loving partnership that had withstood droughts and blizzards, market crashes and personal challenges, building something stronger and more enduring with each passing year. It was a lesson their children carried forward, and their children's children after them, that the strongest foundations are built not on dependence or pride, but on the recognition of each person's unique value and contribution. That true partnerships, whether in business or in love, elevate both parties to heights neither could reach alone. And so the legacy of Winifred Wilson and August O'Malley lived on, not just in the prosperous ranch that bore both their names, but in the example they set for generations to come, an example of courage, respect, and love that transformed not just their own lives, but the very fabric of the community they called home.